Have you ever had that feeling while driving on a long road, where suddenly you feel like you've passed the same tree, the same sign, and the same turn 3 times? You probably think you're just imagining it, but for Adam, it wasn't an imagination. Tonight, I'm taking you to a gas station that doesn't exist on any map, where time moves backward, and where you might meet your older self trying to kill you just to escape. Your mind won't believe the price Adam paid to get out of there, or perhaps to stay there forever. My name is Adam, and I've always believed that highways were merely lines connecting cities until I got caught in that thin divide between reality and madness. It was 2 a.m. The fuel was gasping its final breath in the tank, while the desert silence swallowed every sound coming from the radio. Suddenly, she appeared, station number 9. It wasn't on the map, nor did the GPS mention it. It was just a mass of pale yellow light in the middle of an endless void. I got out of the car. The air was heavy with the scent of old gasoline, the kind of smell you find in a basement abandoned for decades. The silence there was aching, so profound that I could hear the oil dripping from my engine with lethal clarity. I walked toward the reception desk. The glass was coated in a thick layer of dust, but behind it, I saw a man sitting coldly, wearing faded blue overalls that didn't belong to this era. I knocked on the glass. He raised his head with agonizing slowness. His eyes held no expression. They were merely grey hollows watching me with terrifying neutrality. "I need fuel," I said, my voice trembling for the first time. Without a word, he pointed toward the ancient pumps outside. As I walked back out, I noticed a small magazine rack by the door. I froze in my tracks, my heart dropping to my feet. There was a magazine with my face on it, wearing the exact same clothes I have on now. The headline read, "Missing since 1998. I backed away, struggling to process what I was seeing. I looked at the clock hanging above the door. Its hands were spinning backward at a frantic speed, then abruptly stopping at 4 a.m. I ran to my car. I didn't want fuel. I didn't want anything but to escape this place. I floored the engine and sped away at 140 kilometers per h, shrouded by darkness on all sides. After 5 minutes of continuous driving, a pale yellow light appeared on the horizon. My breathing began to steady. I thought I'd found a way out, but as I drew closer, the features of the place became clear. The blood froze in my veins as I saw the same corroded sign, Station No. 9. I hadn't moved forward. I was returning to the exact same point. I turned to the passenger seat and found that cursed magazine sitting there. My image on the cover began to age right before my eyes. I stepped out of the car again, like one possessed, as if the place held a magnet, pulling my soul before my body. This time, the attendant was standing by the pump, holding the nozzle as if he'd been waiting for me for centuries. He whispered in a voice like the rustle of dry leaves, "The road is long, Adam, and the return trip requires a price you do not yet possess." At that moment, I looked into the side mirror. I didn't see my reflection. I saw a young child crying behind the steering wheel, wearing my shirt, looking at me with eyes screaming for help. The surroundings began to shift. The walls closed in, and the smell of dust turned into the stench of graveyard soil. I realized then that I hadn't lost my way in the desert. I had lost my way in time. The station wasn't a place for rest. It was a trap waiting for the right version of me to imprison it in an eternal loop. And every time I tried to scream, the wind took my voice and threw it back at me as eerie whispers from behind the derelict building. I stood frozen before that attendant, the sound of my own breathing, the only thing breaking the desert's lethal silence. I looked down at my hand gripping the car door and noticed something that terrified me. My skin appeared paler, and my veins were bulging in a way I had never seen before, as if this place was siphoning the life out of me with every passing second. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice choked. "And how do you know my name?" He didn't answer. Instead, he simply gestured toward a side window in the station building. I approached cautiously, curiosity wrestling with the terror inside me. When I looked through the grimy glass, I wished I had stayed in the darkness of the road. I saw a small table, and around it sat 3 figures. The first was a 7-year-old child, weeping silently while clutching an old wooden toy. It was the exact same favorite toy I had lost in my childhood. The second was a man in his 50s, wearing a frayed suit, his face buried in his weary hands. As for the third, he was an old man, breathing with great difficulty, looking directly at me through the glass, with eyes full of regret and warning. The bitter truth hit me at that moment. These weren't strangers. These were me. The station wasn't just detaining me. It was holding every stage of my life simultaneously. I turned to the attendant with a desperate scream. "Set me free." He let out a dry laugh that sounded like shattering glass and said, "The door is always open, Adam, but it is you who chooses to return every time." I got back into my car, and this time I decided not to drive on the asphalt. I veered off into the sands, attempting to cut through the desert, away from the path dictated by the place. I drove for miles, sand billowing behind me, until I began to see lights on the distant horizon. A flicker of hope rose within me, but it soon turned to ash. The lights weren't from a city or a police station. They were the lights of Station 9, welcoming me once more, but this time it looked older, more dilapidated, as if it had aged with me during that short journey. I stepped out of the car and collapsed to my knees. I looked into the side mirror again. I didn't see the child this time. I saw the 50-year-old man from inside, reaching his hand out to me from behind the glass, as if trying to pull me into the world of dead images. Suddenly, my car radio crackled to life on its own. It wasn't music or news. It was my mother's voice, whispering the same sentence she had told me years ago. "Don't be late, Adam, for the night steals those who do not pay attention to time." In that instant, the station lights vanished, and a darkness unlike any I had ever seen took hold. I heard the sound of footsteps approaching on the gravel, heavy, rhythmic steps. They weren't the attendant's footsteps. They were the steps of something much larger, something crawling from beneath the station sands to claim the version of me whose time had come to be buried. The footsteps approaching weren't just movement on gravel. They were a rhythm, crushing time itself. I froze as the darkness began to peel away from the station, revealing a reality my mind wasn't prepared to witness. The station wasn't made of brick and mortar. It was a living entity. Its walls vibrated with a faint pulse, and the fuel pumps groaned like suffocating human chests. I looked at my hands, but I didn't scream. Screams have no voice here. My hands were literally melting, turning into grains of black ash that drifted and clung to the station walls. The attendant stood directly behind me now. I felt his breath, cold, without a single atom of oxygen. He whispered, a sound that gnawed at my nerves. "The escape isn't on the road, Adam. The escape is realizing you never actually arrived here." He grabbed my shoulder with an inhuman strength and pulled me into the room where I had seen my previous versions. But the table was empty now. No child, no middle-aged man, no elder. There was only a massive wooden picture frame in the center of the room, containing a deep black void that throbbed with a terrifying gravity. Station 9 is a trap for lost souls, the place where everyone who tries to outrun their fate ends up, stranded in a never-ending moment. I peered into the frame and saw a scene from the past, myself as a child, playing in our garden. My mother watched me with a cryptic smile, holding that same cursed magazine. Suddenly, in the image, she turned toward the camera, toward me standing in the station, and said clearly, "You're too late, Adam, the place is full." In that instant, a massive force began pulling me into the frame. I fought with everything I had, but my memories were fading like smoke in a gale. I felt my body becoming thin as paper. My color bled away until I was nothing but a gray shadow. The attendant seized my last remaining hand before it dissolved and said with lethal coldness, "Now, you are not Adam. You are merely a memory, and a memory belongs on the wall." He shoved me into the frame. Upon impact with the void, a cosmic chill froze my very soul. Suddenly, the pale yellow light of the station returned. The clock above the door began to tick again, but it wasn't counting seconds. It was counting the lifespans of the newcomers. Looking out from behind the glass of the frame, I found myself hanging on the wall alongside thousands of other photos, faces frozen in terror, all screaming in silence behind the glass. Suddenly, I heard a car engine approaching. Powerful headlights pierced the desert gloom. A young man stepped out of his car, looking lost, exactly as I once did. He approached the magazine rack and reached for the one with my face as I aged. In that moment, I saw the attendant walk out to greet him. The shock that shattered my world was that the attendant was no longer the man in faded blue overalls. He looked exactly like me. He had my features, my voice, even the moles on my face. I understood the price now. For the old Adam to leave, a new Adam must take his place to imprison those who follow. The truth is, station number 9 doesn't appear on maps because it is the map. It is the end we all reach when we stop running toward the truth. Adam is still there. Perhaps he is the attendant smiling at you right now as you read these words. Or perhaps he is the shadow you glimpse in your rearview mirror when driving alone on a deserted road. Always remember, not every light in the dark is a lifeline. Some lights are merely bait for a hunter who has been waiting for centuries. If you enjoyed the story of Station 9, tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt like you've passed through the exact same place twice? And don't forget, stay with me, for the truth is always stranger than fiction.